Hello out there, I welcome you once again to Marriage Without Tears channel. This is Felix Okeke, your marriage counselor and coach. The 14th day of February every year is usually celebrated by most couples around the world as Lovers' Day. They call it the Valentine's Day, the Lovers' Day. And people take their spouses, their partners to different locations, different choice locations. Could be hotels, could be eateries, it could be anywhere in the park, everywhere. They go out there, they celebrate the the uniqueness of being in love. They celebrate what it means to actually be there for one another. And I discovered that after that day, what happens later, it sometimes leaves much to be desired. And that's why I am coming with this very particular production. I'm looking at how we can sustain love in a relationship, how we can nurture love, how we can package love in such a way that it continually adds value to our lives as couples and as partners. So just stay close to me. Once again, if you are yet to be part of this channel, look at this red button by my side, click on it and get subscribed immediately. This is a channel that is essentially meant for married couples or those who are engaged to be married. This is where you learn the art of how to run effectual and effective marriages and families. So click here and get subscribed immediately. How can one sustain love in a relationship? Very, very dynamic question. And I want you to learn from this. Get your husband, get your wife close together. Learn from this. Number one, if you must sustain love in a relationship, you must learn how to overlook trivial matters. I have seen couples quarrel many times over trivial issues. They begin to lay emphasis on minor things of life, things that should not cause a quarrel. Like how did you press the tube of a toothpaste? How did you drop the so and so cloth? Where you ought not to drop them. I mean, why don't you just pick up that cloth and hang it where it should? If if whatever thing is not done, why don't you try as much as possible to help your spouse to do that instead of squabbling over it? Many people have quarreled over trivial matters, and before you know it, it became a very gigantic molehill that can no longer be curtailed. So if you actually want to sustain your love, if you actually want to make your love grow with time, then learn from henceforth not to quarrel over trivial matters. Very, very important. And secondly, I also want you to know that no matter who you are not a perfect individual, and so is also your spouse or your partner. You can't get a Mr. Perfect or a Miss Perfect anywhere. Everyone has weaknesses and strengths. So from now henceforth, my second point, begin to lay more emphasis on your partner's area of strength. And if there are weaknesses in your spouse, try as much as possible to help him or her to curtail those weaknesses. It's very, very important. Begin to invest in the life of your spouse in such a way that the weaknesses which over time they have become their portion, that it begins to reduce in their lives. I have seen people, for whatever reason, they don't brush their mouth or they don't keep it clean, they don't clean up their person regularly. You can help your spouse by even reminding him or her that it is time to, take a bath, or even take a bath together as a way of encouraging that person to be more hygienic. There are so many things you can do to encourage your spouse and make your spouse to actually come out from that weakness and then, of course, become a better human being. There is no point in trying to derobe him in public. There's no point in trying to complain about him. No, the moment you complain, your spouse becomes defensive. But if you make up your mind to help your spouse or your partner to overcome that area of weakness, he or she will become a far better person. That is one thing you must know from now henceforth. Number three, you want to actually see your love grow from strength to strength. Please cease from squabbling over money matters. Instead of squabbling over money issues, because I have seen spouses squabble over how much they earn, what they save, what they, what they save and what they spend. They squabble over this. They never sit back to actually plan their finances. One of the things a quality spouse or quality partners do is to sit back and plan their finances. You can do that with your spouse. We did an earlier video on how to plan your finances as a couple. Go back and check it. You can decide on what to spend per time, what to invest, what to save, and so on and so forth, instead of squabbling over it. There are things you can put in place that can make you grow from strength to strength as a spouse, as partners in love. Is very, very important. So stop squabbling over monetary issues. It is important indeed. And before I go to number 4, I want to remind us once again, are you yet a member of this very particular community, Marriage Without Tears channel? Please, if you are not, there's a red button by my side. Click on it and become a member of this channel so that you can be receiving our productions from time to time, to the glory of God. Number 4, you should try as much as possible to be responsive to one another's needs. It is very critical as a couple. I have seen couples who seem to delight in doing things independently. No, you should have done that while you are a single, but the moment you get married, it has become an interdependent kind of relationship. You must pay attention to the needs of one another, to the drives of one another, to the joys of one another. You must begin to pay attention to what makes the other one better, what makes the other one more, what inspires, or what the other person is passionate about. Pay more attention to the needs of one another and then be responsive to those needs. How are you responsive to the needs of one another? Is by possibly asking, inquiring and learning to study one another from time to time. The way I knew my spouse or my partner when we got married is different from the way I know her now. I know her at a deeper level, more than when we met about 3 decades ago. So you learn more about one another on a daily basis so that you can respond positively to the needs of one another. That is how to make love grow. Love does not grow when we are ignorant of one another's needs or when we become unresponsive to the needs of one another. Now, when we're talking about needs, there are emotional needs, there are physical needs, there are spiritual needs, and there are mental needs. So you need to understand that and begin to work towards meeting those needs. When you meet the needs of one another, the relationship begins to gel together, and then you begin to grow in love. If, for instance, I discover that my partner is facing a very terrible problem that may require some spiritual exercise, then I can join with her to do maybe a 3-day or 4 days or 7 days, as we desire to make it, fasting and praying. That is how you get involved in addressing the needs of one another. That's how you get responsive to the needs of one another. If it is about sexual needs, I dare not starve my spouse of sexual needs when I know that I am healthy, I can do that. So why are you starving one another sexually? There are things you can do to ameliorate some of these needs, because if you are not responsive to one another's needs, there's the tendency for that person to seek solace outside or become more jittery on the inside, and your guess is as good as mine. So if you want your love life to grow as a couple, you must be responsive to one another's needs. Number 5, for a couple that actually wants to see their love life flourish, they must have areas of sharing, ways of sharing intimacy with one another. They must develop intimacy with one another. The intimacy can be developed. I remember earlier years in my marriage, I and my wife, we don't birth together, but today we are doing that regularly. I remember years ago, sometimes I can come back to the house very late, and when my family had taken their dinner, but I realized that it is more convenient and better when we all sit at the family table and we take our meals. So we make adjustments and create intimacy with one another. I realized that it is a lot better to share the same bedroom with your spouse instead of your wife or your husband having a different bedroom. When we are closer together, even sharing the same bedroom, it becomes easier for us to gel together, to breathe together, to find ourselves in one another's arms, and to make love spontaneously if need be. So create intimacy. You can also create some shared values. Maybe you can decide to study a course together. You may decide to attend the spiritual exercise together. You may decide to, do some certain things together as a couple. It may be something as simple as going on a walk together every evening. It can be something as good or as simple as visiting your neighbors on a weekend. Something that you do together, a shared exercise, a shared hobby. You can decide to, play a game of chess together, a game of football together. There must be something. You try as much as possible to create the right intimacy that can cause you to laugh together, to shout together, to scream together. It is very, very important. Shared intimacy, shared values is very important in a relationship. And I pray that you adopt it even in your own life as you speak. And of course, the sixth one, for a couple that actually want to see their love transcend, become greater and greater, they should learn to pray together as a couple. Sometimes when we pray together, we open our hearts in a way that we cannot do otherwise. We begin to say things that will make one another begin to, become more involved. It's like we have brought our innermost feelings as a couple together before God. And this saying that a couple that prays together, stays together is very true. You can never see a couple that pray together begin to part just like that. You part because there is a gap in your spiritual, in your spiritual life. There is a gap somewhere. That's how the enemy crosses in. He creates a gap and he crosses in. But if you are fond of praying together, reasoning together, bringing out your innermost feelings together before God and expecting the same right answers and positive answers from God, it becomes easier for your love to triumph, to stand the test of time. So that is my sixth point, really. That's my sixth point, really. And when I go to the seventh point, I want you to listen to me attentively. The seventh point, I say it in almost all my videos, and I must say it here again. The way we speak to one another, the way we communicate. The way we communicate. Communication is more than a verbal thing. Communication is not just talking. Communication is in our gestures, is in the way we squeeze our face. Communication is in the words that come out of us. Communication is the way we hold hands. Communication is deeper than just talking. Communication is very deep, is very, very important in the life of any couple. You have to be skillful in the way you communicate with one another. Timing is very important in communication. Very, very important. You don't say certain things. If you say the right things at the wrong time, it may not be perceived well. It may not be taken well by your partner. So saying the right thing at the right time is very important. I will give you an example. A couple was going to work, and right on the highway, the woman now just mentioned to the husband that she just received the news that that her mother-in-law, who happens to be the mother of the husband, is very sick in hospital. That she just forgot to tell him why they were at home. Do you know what happened? The man lost control of the steering. So your guess is as good as mine. That was a good information, but it was given at the wrong time. A man comes back from work, he's just undressing, he's getting ready, he needs to take his bath and cool down. But the first thing using welcoming him is the school fees of his children that are yet unpaid. That is a good information, but it was delivered at the wrong time. So be skillful in the way you manage communication between one another. There are things you will say, even though it is right, but it will be perceived by your spouse as wrong. So I want you to be very, very careful about communication. Communication is a very wide area. There are also so many videos we have done on communication. If you scroll through our video platform, you will also see some of these wonderful productions. Go check it out, and you'll be thoroughly blessed. You'll be thoroughly blessed. That's my 7th point. You want your love to blossom. You want your love to become what you desire it to be. You want it to flourish. There is a need for you to be watering it every day with some of the things we have mentioned here. There are yet so many other things I want to mention, but I don't want this video to be too long. Maybe we'll look for a part 2 of this production. But you actually want your love to stand the test of time. Water it with some of the things we have mentioned here. And I can bet you that in a couple of months from now, every day will become a Valentine's Day for you. And you will bless the name of God for what He's doing in your life and in your marriage. I thank you very much. Please, before you check out, this red button by my side, click on it, get subscribed, be part of this awesome channel. I look forward to seeing you next week. Once again, my name is Felix Okeke. I'm your marriage counselor and coach. Have a wonderful season. Thank you very much.